Hi, my name is Carrie. I am the producer of Space Punks, the motion comic, and I'm here with the author of Space Punks, Anna Masakat. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, Carrie. I am so excited that I'm allowed to join you, and I'm so excited to present this project to everyone out there. So yes, I'm Anna. I'm the author of Space Punks, and together with Carrie, we are now turning Space Punks into an audio drama and motion comic, and it's the motion comic we want to talk about today.
This is trailer number 1 for the motion comic that we recently released on socials and is available everywhere Arcane Fiction Productions is and anywhere that Anna Masakat is. So you should check it out on socials if you haven't seen it yet. We want to go through and give our thoughts, a director's cut commentary on the trailer and what it took to produce it. My first question is about the art, because it was you who found our artist. You did hours and hours of compiling potential artists for the project, and I was just wondering, what were the key things you were looking for the motion comic?
So it was very difficult to find the right artist for us because we wanted something fresh and unique, but we also needed someone who is very professional and who is obviously a very good artist and knows what he's doing and who knows how to do comic art and panels. So all of this combined was already difficult. Plus, what I personally really wanted is someone who loves cyberpunk and understands the cyberpunk aesthetic. So I mostly tried to find someone on Facebook in different Facebook groups for comic artists, but mostly I was just contacted by scammers there. So that was really not the way to find someone. So I did it like the really old-fashioned way, and I went on ArtStation and spent, as you say, hours and hours and hours there trying to find someone. And then Carrie and I discussed it and contacted some people, and Carrie talked to the people, and we saw if we could work together. And Guilherme instantly stood out to me because he has this very, very vibrant neon colors, and he really, really understands the cyberpunk aesthetic. So his style instantly stood out to me because it's cyberpunk, but it's also a modern version of cyberpunk and not like the 80s retro version that we see so often. It is fresh, it is bold, yeah, it is bold, it is fresh, but it is also very much on genre, and so I immediately loved it. And I think once he started doing the actual panels for us, we were totally convinced of him.
One of the things that stood out with his artwork when we were sorting through artists is he used all of the cyberpunk colors, neon and bold colors. And there's, some grays and stark contrasts. I really loved it. And his cityscapes are fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, so it is gritty, it is sexy, which is both very important for cyberpunk, but it is also colorful, which is important for cyberpunk also because otherwise it would be just a bleak dystopia. One of the big differences between cyberpunk and other dystopian sci-fi subgenres is they're often very bleak, and cyberpunk has this power of colors. The color palettes are really, really extensive, and we see that like in games like Cyberpunk 2077, which is very colorful. And even if you go away from the 80s neon cliches, there is still a lot of color there. And I think that's something that cyberpunk fans also like about the aesthetic. And in Guilherme's case, he just nailed it. He just understands the genre. And then once he started talking, it was clear that he really loves the genre, and that was, I think, for us, the point where we said he's our guy.
Well, and I went back and counted how many artists we looked through, and there were 80-something artists that we had collected information for and had to narrow it down based off of, whether or not they could show that they were familiar with the cyberpunk genre, whether or not they could color their own works and add their own text bubbles, and things like this are an important factor when looking for an artist. There were many great artists that couldn't deliver the file type that we needed for a motion comic. If they're still drawing pen to paper, it wasn't something that we could send to our animator to layer to create motion, and so that was a big challenge. A lot of people got crossed off the list just because they couldn't deliver the file type. And then after that, it's, are they familiar with cyberpunk? And then a challenge that we were faced with early on that you brought up is that the artist had to demonstrate that they could draw action scenes because Space Punks is so action-packed.
Well, I saw his stuff on ArtStation and he had some very dynamic images there. So it was pretty clear to me that he would be able to do that. And once he started drawing it, then it was clear that he can. And we also worked together on this entire thing very closely. And since I have a film background, my entire writing is very cinematic. And the way I basically direct him a little bit and help him to set the right angles and the right, scale for the images and so on. And like in our trailer, first that is like more here where we see more of the city, and then we jump into a close-up of this boot and so on. So we work on this together closely, and I think that it will work really well once we continue with the motion comic.
And we ran into some trouble with our first trailer because it was our very first, and so we're kind of learning the ropes of, how to direct the project, the workflow with our team, what's going to work best between audio, artist, and animator. And as the motion comic director, you had your hands full making sure that the panels artistically depicted the story in a way that wasn't going to cross over into other familiar elements that we're used to in sci-fi, that it could be its own work and depict the book and not other productions. So with this panel that we're looking at here, can you tell us what you had to change directing the panel, what corrections needed to be made?
So the trailer basically is a bit like a prequel of the story of Space Punks, because it says 100 years ago there was the war between humans and AI, and we don't have that in the actual series. The series is 100 years later, and the world is one where AI is completely banned, and therefore everything is a little bit different than in most sci-fi scenarios. So this is more like a prequel. So what I wanted is to show in only a few panels this war against AI and how it ended. And so this won't be in the comic at all. None of those panels will be in the comic. So we created something new here, and I wanted to have visuals that will instantly tell the story in a very minimalistic way, so everyone instantly understands what is going on. So we wanted the robots to look a little bit like the robots in Terminator, but of course not too much. So it's like the familiar thing. You will be reminded of it a little bit, but it's more like a reference, like an homage to something, and not copying. So this was very important for us. And here on this first panel I wanted to have it very clearly and easily visible that it is a human in a power armor fighting against a robot, and there must be a clear distinction between the two of them. So you see it at first glance that one is a human and one is a robot. And I think that Guilherme did that really, really well. At the beginning, the very first power armor turned out a little bit too similar to the Spartans in Halo. So we reworked that, and I think the end result turned out really, really nicely.
What did you think about the action in this scene? This was the first time we got to see our animator at work, and we were wondering how well he'd be able to take the elements and create action in this little battle scene. So what was your first impression?
I think it looks great. I think the action is very cinematic. Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, it's really nicely animated, and considering that it's just such a short thing and created out of one image, I think it's pretty amazing. But what I personally like most about the entire thing is this panel we are looking at now. When I talked to Guilherme about it and created the storyboard for this trailer, I wanted to show in a very, very simple way humans won the war against AI. And this is again a reference to Terminator, where we have this very iconic shot of the robot foot stomping the human skull and crushing it. And this is so iconic and so famous, and everybody knows that. This image alone tells the entire story of Terminator, the robot foot stomping the human head. I wanted to do exactly the same, just reversed. So here we have the human stomping the robot. The human boots, the power armored human boot stomping on this robot skull and basically killing the robot. And this is telling the story. This panel alone is telling the story that humanity won the war against AI. In a very simplistic way, in one image, you tell everything that needs to be known, and we have this wonderful reference to Terminator, and I'm a big fan of Terminator, of course. So this is definitely my favorite one. And I think Guilherme did it so well. The drawing is so fantastic. It's so dynamic, absolutely beautiful. And the colors. And then the animation, I think the animation is just great. How this wood stomps the skull is wonderful, and combined with the sound design.
I was really blown away by this scene when I first saw it all put together. The combination of the drawing, which was already such an iconic scene, like you said, I think it encapsulates everything that happened before the Space Punks books that we're familiar with the series, where you can see everything that happened in one snapshot. And because we're familiar with the other side of this, with Terminator, oh, okay, humanity won the war against AI in this context. It's a totally different world than if AI won, right? But what was so impressive to me is when it was animated and the sound was overlaid, just what a cinematic scene this was. And I thought they got the sounds and the motion just perfect. I'm so proud of our team.
Yes, me too. I think this is really wonderful. And this is how I see how the motion comic will look like. It will be very cinematic. It will come very close to an actual film, because we will do the entire storyboard. So it will be like you shoot a film with the different scales and angles and everything. So there are so many techniques how to tell a story with editing, basically. And this is what we will do. So I think that's a very nice example, those two panels together.
I really appreciate your experience in film, and I think that this scene really demonstrates that you understand how film should flow, and the motion that needs to happen and the pacing is coming together so nicely. And it's a huge, huge boon to have you on our team, and that you're willing to, as the author, participate as a director for the motion comic is just incredible. And I'm so excited to see the final motion comic. Our first episode is going to be so thrilling for me.
Oh, for me too. I'm absolutely thrilled. For me, it's a dream coming true, because I can bring my book to life. And usually when authors get their books adapted, they will be very unhappy, because usually it will get butchered. And this is for me the chance to be actively involved and work with a team of amazing artists and animators and musicians and so on that will help me make this a reality, and everybody will bring in their entire talent and creativity. Together we can create this thing. So for me, it is really a dream coming true. And I am super excited, and I can't wait for us to continue. I don't know, speaking of the team we have, Carrie, should we talk about the music, or would you like to talk about it later?
Yeah, so could you please tell us about our composer and how we reached out to him and his willingness to participate in Space Punks? Is exciting.
I think our composer is one of the things that makes this project exceptional and will make it stand out massively from other projects like that, because we have no one else than Michael McCann, who will write the music for us. He will write a theme song and hopefully the entire soundtrack for the entire motion comic series. And Michael McCann, for those who don't know who that is, I just don't remember the name, he's basically like what Hans Zimmer is for film scores. Michael McCann is for video game scores. He's the video game Hans Zimmer. He is known for Deus Ex, of course, XCOM, and Superfuse, and other games, Splinter Cell. So he has been a huge name in the video game industry for 20 years. The interesting thing about this project is, I keep it really short, is that I have been a fan of his for, 15 years or something, and I always write my books listening to his music. I've written Space Punks listening to his soundtrack of Superfuse. So basically his music has a direct influence on the story and on my creative process. And then when Carrie and I started working on the thing and we started talking about music, and I just threw in his name, I said, I always dreamed of working with Michael McCann on something someday. And Carrie was, oh, well, why not ask him? And she did, and he replied to us, and he was interested. And for me, it was like, oh my God, I think I will drop that because I'm such a fangirl. And then we had a meeting, a Zoom meeting with him, and it turned out that he's really an amazing person and a fantastic guy. And I think it just clicked, you know. The three of us really got along really well immediately and understood each other. And for him, it was very cool to hear that there's actually someone who creates their art, in my case, the books, influenced by his music. And now he is reading the book and is writing the music to the book so that the entire thing goes full circle, which is just amazing. So I am incredibly proud that we have Michael McCann on board, not only because he is such a big name, but because he's like probably one of the most talented composers of our time. So I'm incredibly proud and humbled that he is working with us.
Well, I've also just been so impressed by his character. Like you said, reaching out to him and getting a response back was fantastic. But when we got him on a call and he was so human, he's humble and polite and so workable, and he showed interest in the project right away. It's just been a dream come true. I think he's fantastic. It's been such an honor working with him so far. When he picked up the books immediately and he said, well, yes, I got the book. I'm reading it. I'm visualizing all of the musical elements for this scene and had questions for you. That kind of engagement was, to me, not only incredibly professional, but just so genuine. And I appreciate his work a lot. And, you know, reading the books and then listening to the Superfuse score, I can feel the music in the books. And you can feel that pace of action and suspense in the scenes. So it's going to be so, so cool for him to come back and compose pieces specifically for that scene.
I think so too, yeah. So I'm glad you see it that way, because it's really, for me, music is so important in my creative process. His music has been part of my creative process for so many years. And I think really that Space Punks breathes the Superfuse soundtrack, because I listen to it so often, especially when writing the entire showdown and the events on Venus and so on. You also can basically feel the music inside the story. It goes full circle and it's wonderful, and it's why being in the creative industry and create things is such a wonderful thing, because we creatives can, you know, inspire each other and influence each other and create better stuff. This is the beauty of it. And so I can't wait for what Mike will write for us. Ideally, hopefully, if enough people support this project, he will be able to write an entire score, which is also awesome for all his fans, because he doesn't do many soundtracks. He is more like, you know, the kind of guy who picks his project. He's very picky about what he's working at. He's not doing a new soundtrack every couple of months. So there is only very few things for him available to listen to. So the fans who really love his music will get a new Michael McCann soundtrack.
It's a really important note to make here, that if we raise the full funds for the full score of Space Punks that we will use not only through season 1 but through following seasons, that will be its own soundtrack available for fans of his work to have in full. I'm excited for that. I want the soundtrack.
Oh yeah, it will be amazing. I mean, the backers, of course, will get the soundtrack, and later on it will be up for sale and download and whatnot. Mike will sell it himself, and it will be part of the audio drama. It will be part of the motion comic, of course, where he will actually conduct it. I mean, he's not just writing it. He will take the footage we have, the edited footage with the sound effects and everything, and he will use the stems and all the bits of pieces of the soundtrack to put it into the final product, like the composers in the movies do, basically. So this is another thing that makes it so incredibly exciting, what we will have here. This is very, very special. So everybody who has a soundtrack by Michael McCann, don't forget to support us.
Yes, thank you. You said this already, but it's absolute magic watching everyone collaborate on a project like this. You know, pulling together a separate artist, animator, voice talent, composer, author, and you see it all come together in a piece that is so cinematic. This little trailer has been so exciting as a first step, watching everyone's work come together.
Absolutely. I think it was also a little bit of a test run. Now we all know each other and now we know how the workflow should be. We worked that out really. I mean, it's very complicated because there are so many different aspects involved. So it's a complex thing. But now if we could figure it out, and I think that the main trailer we're working on now will be absolutely fantastic. I mean, it will beat this one by miles for sure.
I can't wait to have some of the characters in a teaser. That's what I want. I want to see Aztec and David in the prison. I'm going to be so stoked to hear the character voices and them come to life through our artists and see it all come together. So with our voiceover, too, just a quick note, we did go through a couple different voiceovers. We knew which track we wanted to use for this scene, and we wanted to make sure that it was a voice that meshed well with it. So even though we came across some great voices that could pull great trailer voices, they didn't sound quite right for the scene, and we needed something that sounded a little somber. The way that I prompted it is I told my voiceover artist, this is like you're recalling World War II, right? You know, we're all familiar with it. It was dark times. Every nation experienced it in a different way, and it's somber. So you're not just telling it like a historian, you're telling it with a little bit of feeling, even though it's not something that you directly experience. We had some challenges with this scene, just in pacing and when to run voiceovers. As the director for the motion comic, what elements would you have changed if you could go back a little bit?
Oh, I absolutely loved the voiceover. I think our voiceover actor did a fantastic job, and it is actually exactly what you say. It is not just like the typical trailer voice, but it is as if he were talking about World War II. So I am absolutely happy with that. As you say, he wasn't the first one who tried. We had some people try, and it was a process to find a voice that would actually match this and fit. It's not as easy as people think. People always think, oh yeah, everybody can do that. No. It's really, really complicated to find the perfect voice for anything.
Yes. And I anticipate this will be a challenge moving forward because of how dynamic Michael's scores are. There's going to be so much action in the background. We need a voiceover that'll stand out and be compatible with so much movement in the music and sound effects. And that's tricky.
That's true. It's tricky. Also, to mention the music one more time. So what we hear in this trailer actually is not the score from our motion comic. This is a track from the Superfuse soundtrack written by Michael McCann, and we bought the license to use that for our trailer, and of course with Michael's blessing, and it fits perfectly for this situation. So if someone wants to check out this soundtrack, it's available. You can buy it or download it on iTunes, and yeah, check it out. I think people always talk about the Deus Ex soundtracks, but I think Superfuse is absolutely amazing and it deserves a little bit more love. So check it out and you will also find this track in there.
I love the soundtrack. I would definitely recommend it.
Yeah, and Mike and I have been talking about music so much ever since we started working together. Totally fascinating about how he works and how much thought he puts into literally everything. And that's why it takes him time to create his stuff. And that's why he picks his projects so thoroughly, because he would put all his talent and heart and a lot of thought into everything. He's just an amazing musician, and right now I just finished writing Space Punk 3 and I was listening to his soundtrack of XCOM, and that's also a fantastic one. I can totally recommend that one. It's really great for action.
So with this scene of the Earth exploding, I loved listening to your direction. Talking with our comic artist, you made it clear you wanted it to be obvious at a glance that it was Earth, and really big in the explosion and just the impact of that sentiment of Earth blowing up. What are your thoughts on this scene, and what did you want to make sure was incorporated in this scene?
So this is not how it happens in the books. Again, this is specifically for the trailer, because similar to the foot stomping the robot head, I wanted to show in a very simple way at first glance what has happened. The foot stomping the robot head will tell us immediately humanity won. But at a horrible price. And the most horrible price we could imagine that we pay for such a victory is exactly this. Boom. Earth explodes. Yeah. So I wanted it to be visible that it's actually Earth. The very first concept of it, the blue was missing a little bit. And then I asked Guilherme to make it really blue. And so everyone just glancing at it knows it's Earth exploding. This is the most horrible price we can pay. And it's not exactly how it happens in the books, but the story is the same. So we lost Earth to win the war against AI. Fortunately, humanity has spread over the solar system and beyond. So, they still have a home, but our original home is gone. And I think that that's a very, very terrifying idea to imagine that Earth is actually gone, because we're all connected to it so strongly.
Well, and 100 years later, it's still incredibly important and everyone feels the loss. And I love how in the books you have characters reminisce on Earth and they talk about it like almost an ancient mythical place and with a lot of reverence and a lot of loss. I mean, how many thousands of years do you think we would mourn the loss of our home? Probably generations and generations.
Probably, yes, because we are all rooted there. I think it's not just like our planet, we are all part of it. And so losing it is really the most horrible price we could pay for such a war. So I think they did great here. Guilherme Matos, our comic artist, creating this panel, but also later the animator and the sound designer who did this really, really well. And it's a very strong moment. And it's something that makes you feel ice cold, especially with the music and everything. It makes you feel ice cold. So, holy shit, okay, we lost Earth. That's bad. That's very, very bad. And it's told in just 1 second. And it's absolutely clear. So everybody did a great job here for sure.
This is a great chance too to give Mino some credit, because I essentially for the trailer gave him the elements and some very loose instructions and then said, work your magic. Thank you for doing it by yourself. And he was so generous about it. And he did. He put together all of the music and effects within just a couple of days on his own and only a very few elements to work with and instructions. But he made an artistic decision here to not have a really loud explosion for Earth and instead let us feel the impact kind of with silence or just, that empty space of now the Earth no longer exists. And I loved that. Listening back, especially when we had the motion to it, I thought that made a bigger impact.
Absolutely. I think that was the perfect decision here. I wouldn't have thought of that. For me, I was thinking about a boom, but then I saw it and I was thinking, yeah, that's just perfect because it shows the loss. It's much more depressing in a way to see it like that. So yeah, Mino is great and I'm super excited to work with him. He did an amazing job with the trailer and he's also an amazing guy. So it's really a pleasure to work with him. Great.
This is something too we'll come across in multiple scenes throughout the books as we continue with the series, is that there are times where there's a lot of battle and a lot of explosion and a lot of noise that you would think that you would hear in the effects, but in space, it's swallowed up. And so you have to be able to work with music and sound effects and just the background ambient effects that you may not be consciously aware of that are bringing the impact of the feeling in the event without the actual sound because it's being lost in space. And I thought that this was a great demonstration of that, where we're seeing it from space and his creative impulse was to create an effect that was almost like the Earth was swallowed up in the explosion. And that was great.
Yeah, I love it. Absolutely. And that's actually a very important thing that you mentioned here. Despite it being like a fun story and action story and everything, I put a lot of effort into making it as realistic as possible. And I did a lot of research into, astrophysics and space technology and so on. So everything that is in those books is very much funded in reality. And of course, there is no sound in space. And like everybody, I love the sounds the Fighters make in Star Wars, right? I mean, they sound awesome. It's a wonderful sound design and how they lasers, pew, pew, and everything. Cool. Right. But it's just not realistic because sound doesn't travel to a vacuum. So in space, there is no sound. So whatever we will have that is in space, we will have to do without sound to keep this realism. So we won't have like There are no lasers in space punks anyway, but like, I don't know, rockets exploding and stuff like that. We won't hear that. So Mino will be very creative to create those effects without the obvious effects. And I can't wait for that. And I think that he is really excited to do that too.
That was a lot of fun too when I reached out to you asking about world elements for Mino. You know, what kind of sound should be included, what shouldn't be included. And one of the first things you said is there's no pew pew lasers. That these battle scenes are more like The Expanse than Star Wars. And he did have to make some changes in some of the original battle sounds for the teaser trailers. He did have some laser sounds at first, and so we went back and corrected those. But he had some great insight. He pulled up a scene of The Expanse really quickly, listened to some of the battle, and immediately knew how to make the effects for the guns, where it sounded not quite like a gun, but not a laser. Sounded like an advanced weapon. And people don't realize what goes into considering these things for the scenes and for the music and sound effects. And like you said, with writing, as an author, you have to do a lot of research to create realism in the stories. And with the music and effects and voiceovers, it takes a lot to make it sound real. You have to really consider these things. You have to consider every sound you're incorporating, and everyone's performance, and every individual element matters, because something that sounds off will make the whole scene sound off.
There we go. The vertigo shots, and I'm so excited to have it. It's actually the second time I'm using it. I have used the vertigo shot before in a short film I did a long time ago when I was at film school. I always loved the vertigo shot. It roots back to Hitchcock's movie Vertigo. It was the first time to use it, and a very, very famous vertigo shot was also used in Jaws. And since then, you know, every film school student would love to use it because it's just so cool. And I love it. That's something nobody notices when they watch it, but that's something film geeks like me can get off on, okay? The vertigo shot, that's just a bomb. It's used specifically in scenes that are supposed to make you feel very unsettled and uneasy. That's when you use the vertigo shot. In film, it's done, you hold the focus in one direction and move the camera away in the other. So you have this effect that it's getting what we have here. It zooms closer and away at the same time. And this has a very disturbing effect, and yeah, it gives you vertigo in a way. So you use that, and in our case, we want to show here, oh, so it seems, says the voice. So we think we won the war, but something is looming in the dark, lurking in the dark, and waiting to strike back. And this is where we got this shadowy figure of a robot in a corridor lurking, and the vertigo shot here is perfect. And I already told Guilherme, the artist, when he created the panel, I would like to have it here. So he created it in a way so the animator would have an easier time to do that. And I think it looks really, really nice. And I'm sure we're gonna use a vertigo shot in a motion comic too, because vertigo shots,
Yes.
they're just cool and they make me happy. There's a website called Studio Bender, which is perfect when you want to learn about movie making. And they have pages on the vertigo shot where they explain it in detail. And I mean, he mentioned he already knew what it was, but he also looked at it. And yeah, he did great. The wonderful vertigo shot.
I remember at first the AI wasn't as obvious. So what did you ask to have changed so that it was more apparent what we were looking at?
So I wanted a shadowy figure lurking in the dark, but we can't say for sure what it is. So we see those glowing eyes and we assume, okay, it's probably some kind of robot or AI, and it looks very menacing. But the first ones were too dark, so we couldn't really make out what it is. And I wanted it to be, like with all our panels, on the first glance, clear what is happening there. So here also you see those glowing eyes and this kind of robotic figure, and you know, okay, maybe we didn't won the war at all. Maybe we just think we did. And this is what we wanted to show here. And what I also love about this panel with Guilherme, so we not only have this robot, but this wonderful spaceship corridor, you know, with the magenta and with blue and green, and it is a little bit retro. like alien retro, but it's also cyberpunk, and it's wonderful. I mean, this spaceship corridor is so great, and there are those cables hanging down, and then how Phil animated it with the smoke and everything. It's just perfect.
My first thought was that if Wolfram saw it, he would have a heart attack. If everything that needed to be fixed, it wasn't in its right place there in the corridor.
Yeah. He always, nobody would go anywhere without him.
Or so it seemed. That was actually a hard line to prompt, or so it seemed, because I didn't realize it wasn't apparent at a glance what it meant by or so it seemed. So at first, our voiceover artists were saying, or so it seemed like we thought at a horrible price, but it wasn't, right? Or so it seemed was said with relief, or so it seemed. I said, no. It seems like we won the war against AI, but we don't know, or so it seemed. Again, with a World War II reference, it's like, and we won the war, or so it seemed.
Yeah, we lost Earth and maybe we didn't even win the damn war, so that's really awful.
And then I guess that wraps up our trailer. We did 4 panels for this one, right? 1, 2, 3, I have to count it again. But we have other panels in the work. And the idea was that you wrote the scripts for the trailer panels so that they could be combined into a larger trailer if we wanted to as well. And it tells a bigger story where it gives a little bit of what happened before the series, and then it introduces some of the characters and the first bits of happening from book 1, and the trailer bridges both to give you a really good idea of what the first series will be about.
Yeah, so I created several screenplays for several trailers and made it so we can reuse the same panels but in a different way. And that's also something I learned from the movies, because that's how trailers are created for the movies. Usually they will have specific key moments which they will shuffle around in different ways, and so you have the recognition in the audience, but every trailer or teaser is a little bit different, but you still have the recognition. So I wanted this with our trailers as well, that we have certain things that will instantly remind them of the entire style and the entire project.
I'm so excited. Oh, it's going to be amazing.
Me too. So everyone who's watching this, thank you very much, and don't forget to support us, because this is not, this is a war against AI, not only in Spacepunks, but in reality. And you have the chance to support a team of more than 10 human artists of several different fields. And we are all humans, and we want to create something really awesome for you. So if you want to support humans over AI, this is a project you should consider supporting. So you can support our wonderful comic artist, and our wonderful animator, and our wonderful sound designer, our wonderful music composer, and many more who haven't been mentioned yet in this trailer. So this is the point where you can support us. We also have a concept artist and a cover artist and more people, really. So it's a relatively huge team of humans who came together to create something really, really cool. If you want to support that, there will be a Kickstarter, so don't forget to do that, and you will get something awesome from it also. So it's a win-win for everyone. I think we should crush that robot sky.
Yes, like Aztec says, protect humanity. We are the Legion. I also want to take a moment just to say thank you for the support that we have had. We had a wave of subscribers and VIP subscribers early on when we released our first teaser trailers and mentioned that we were moving in a direction with Spacepunks towards audio drama and motion comic. So thank you so much for your interest. You guys have been amazing. The auditions and people who are participating to be cast in Spacepunks is just absolutely incredible. I'm so appreciative of the talent and all of the support. So thanks again, and we'll catch you next time.